Part 1, Poor Girl Richmond Love Story. What he did next shocked everyone. Poor Girl Richmond Love Story. She was struggling to survive, working 2 jobs just to pay rent, when a wealthy stranger walked into her life. Everyone said a poor and rich could never be together, but one act of kindness would prove them wrong. This emotional love story of class, sacrifice, and an ending no one saw coming will shock you to the core. What the Richmond did next left the entire town speechless. Mia had learned to walk quickly and keep her head down in this city. It was easier that way. People rarely noticed the girl in worn sneakers, carrying 2 heavy bags after a 14-hour shift. She worked at a cleaning service before sunrise, then served coffee until almost midnight. Even then, the money barely kept the lights on in her tiny one-room apartment. There was no time for dreams when survival was already a full-time job. Her shoes had thin soles, letting the cold creep in during winter, but she kept moving. She had no choice. Still, there was one thing she never let the world take from her, the belief that kindness mattered, even in a city ruled by greed. That belief would be tested one rainy afternoon. The sky had been pouring since morning, and by the time her shift ended, she was soaked. She ducked into a small cafe, not because she could afford it, but because the warm air felt like a blessing. She ordered the cheapest tea on the menu, carefully counting the coins in her hand. She was wringing water from her sleeves when she noticed him. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen up close, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a gold watch that could pay her rent for a year, and an air of quiet authority. He sat at the corner table, speaking softly into his phone. His name was Adrian Cole, though Mia did not know it. He was the owner of the largest real estate empire in the city, a man whose signature could decide the fate of entire neighborhoods. When their eyes met, Mia looked away instantly. People like him did not look at girls like her. But when she glanced up again, he was still watching, not with judgment, but with curiosity, and something that almost looked like concern. She did not know that this was not their first meeting. Weeks ago, Adrian had seen her do something most people would have walked past. Something that had stayed in his mind ever since. And now, sitting across from her, he was about to make a decision that would change both of their lives forever. The bell above the cafe door jingled softly, but Mia barely noticed. She was too busy trying not to shiver from her damp clothes. She hoped the tea would last her long enough to warm up, but even holding the cup made her feel the stares from the other customers, people with laptops, designer coats, and conversations about vacations she could never afford. Adrian, however, was not looking at her like they were. His gaze was steady, thoughtful, almost calculating. After a moment, he closed his laptop and approached her table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Mia hesitated, then nodded politely. She had no reason to refuse, but her guard was up. Rich men in this city rarely talked to women like her for good reasons. "You were outside the library last month," Adrian said, as if he was confirming something. "It was late, and you gave your coat to a man sleeping on the bench." Mia's eyes widened. She remembered that night. The man had been shivering, and she had given him her coat without thinking. She had not known anyone was watching. "You saw that?" she asked quietly. "I did," Adrian replied. "And I have been wondering ever since, why would someone with so little give away what little they have?" Mia blinked, unsure how to answer. "Because he was colder than I was," she finally said. "And because if I was in his place, I would hope someone would do the same." Adrian leaned back, studying her. There was no trace of pity in his eyes, only respect. Then he surprised her even more. "I own a few businesses. One of them could use someone with your work ethic. Good pay, regular hours, benefits." Mia's heart skipped. It sounded too good to be true. Offers like this usually came with strings attached. "What's the catch?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. Adrian smiled faintly. "No catch. Just say yes. You deserve better than this." Before she could answer, the cafe manager appeared, frowning at her. "If you're done with your tea, miss, we need the table for paying customers." Adrian's jaw tightened. He turned toward the manager, his voice suddenly cold. "She is with me." And just like that, the entire cafe went silent. The cafe fell so quiet that Mia could hear the hum of the coffee machines. The manager froze mid-step, suddenly unsure how to respond. Adrian's tone had been calm, but there was an authority in it that made people pay attention. "She's with me," he repeated, pulling out his black card and placing it on the table. "In fact, keep the tea coming, and add something to eat. The best you have." The manager's face shifted instantly, from irritation to nervous compliance. "Of course, sir, right away." Mia stared at Adrian. She was not used to people standing up for her, especially not strangers, and definitely not strangers who looked like they stepped out of a luxury magazine. "You did not have to do that," she murmured. "Maybe I did," Adrian replied simply. "People forget that dignity does not depend on a bank account." Minutes later, a plate of warm pastries and steaming tea arrived. Mia tried to eat slowly, but she had not had a proper meal all day, and the food was a comfort she had almost forgotten. Adrian watched her, but not in the way other men sometimes did. His gaze was gentle, curious, like he was trying to read every chapter of her life without making her feel exposed. "Tell me, Mia," he said quietly. "What is your dream?" She almost laughed. "Dreams are for people who can afford them." "That's not true," Adrian countered. "Dreams are for people brave enough to keep them alive." Something in his voice made her look at him more closely. His tailored suit, the subtle shine of his watch, the way people in the cafe kept glancing at him, it all hinted at someone important. "Who are you, Adrian?" she asked. He smiled faintly but did not answer. Instead, he pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and placed it in front of her. "What is this?" she asked, hesitating. "Open it when you get home," he said. "And do not say no until you see what is inside." Confused, Mia slipped the envelope into her worn bag. She had no idea that by the time she opened it, her life would never be the same, and the entire city would be talking about her. Mia sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at the envelope Adrian had given her. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of a choice she was not ready to make. Slowly, she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored paper, and a check. Her breath caught. The number written on it made her heart race. It was more than she could earn in 5 years. But beneath it was a handwritten note. "This is not charity. This is an investment in your dream. Meet me at the address below tomorrow at noon. Adrian." She hardly slept. The next day, she found herself standing in front of a gleaming glass building in the heart of the city. People in suits streamed in and out, but when she walked through the doors, the receptionist greeted her like they had been expecting her. "Right this way, Miss Mia," she said, leading her to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Adrian was there, smiling. But the shock was not just seeing him, it was realizing where she was. His name was on the wall in gold letters. Adrian Cross, CEO, philanthropist, and one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. Mia's voice trembled. "Why me? You could help anyone, why me?" Adrian looked at her with that same calm, steady gaze from the cafe. "Because when I met you, I saw a woman the world overlooked, the same way they once overlooked me. You reminded me of who I was before I had all this. And I am not going to stand by and watch you give up." He led her to a corner office where a team waited. On the table was a contract. "This is your first step," he said. "A position here, mentorship, and the resources to start the business you told me you thought you could never have." Tears filled Mia's eyes. She had walked into that cafe and nobody. Now, the richest man she had ever met was offering her a future she had stopped believing in. By the end of the month, news outlets were running the story, "CEO changes young woman's life after seeing her drinking tea alone." And though people were shocked, Adrian always smiled when asked about it. "Love," he said simply, "is not about where you start, it is about who sees your worth before anyone else does." Do you believe true love can break the barriers of class and money? Share your thoughts below. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an emotional story like this.